The US and Russia are in a diplomatic standoff over Syria, with talks suspended and direct threats marking a low in relations.
War crimes.
Closer to confrontation.
We will beat you harder than you've ever been beaten before.
Wikileaks marks its 10th anniversary by releasing transcripts of US presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's private speeches to Wall Street bankers that she'd prefer were kept out of the public domain. Also ahead, 15 years ago, the US started its military invasion of Afghanistan to rid the country of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. But now the country is under fresh insurgent attacks. With the top stories from the past 7 days and right up to the moment developments as well. This is the Weekly on RT International. My name's Ewan O'Neill. Good to have your company. Relations between the US and Russia have reached an all-time low over the conflict in Syria. As the fighting again escalated on Monday, Washington cut off direct contact with Moscow regarding the peace process. That's making way for accusations and even direct threats.
Russia and the regime owe the world more than an explanation about why they keep hitting hospitals and medical facilities and children and women. These are acts that beg for an appropriate investigation of war crimes.
The threat for this type of a fight is a nation state with modern capabilities, aggressive behavior, and engaging in militarized competition. So who would you pick for that one? I think it would be Russia.
We'll stop you, and we will beat you harder than you've ever been beaten before.
It also edges U.S. and Russian military forces closer to confrontation, impose costs on Syria or Russia or others.
Well, the media went into a frenzy with claims the White House was considering direct airstrikes on Syrian army positions. At the same time, the White House has said it realizes that attacks on President Assad's forces would bring Russia and the US closer to conflict. And indeed, Russia's defense ministry has vowed to shoot down any perceived threat it sees in Syria.
I would like to remind the American strategists that the air cover of the Russian bases in Khmeimim and Tartus is provided by the S-400 and S-300 anti-aircraft weapons systems, the strike radius of which may be a surprise to any unidentified flying objects. I should really acknowledge that the Russian anti-aircraft defenses won't likely have time to figure out through a direct line where the weapon's going or who it belongs to.
Well, back at the beginning of last month, Russia and the US agreed on a joint effort to battle terrorists. It all started on a high note then. Caleb Maupin looks at what went wrong subsequently.
Remember when the United States and Russia were keen on sharing their friendship with the world?
Where's the vodka?
Pizza from the American delegation. This is from the Russian.
Well, it's certainly not like that these days.
Extremist groups will continue to exploit the vacuums that are there in Syria to expand their operations, which will include, no question, attacks against Russian interests, perhaps even Russian cities. And Russia will continue to send troops home in body bags.
So how did it get this bad? Well, there are key factors that are being left out as the hateful words and threats get louder. Firstly, the U.S. broke the ceasefire when it killed 60 Syrian army soldiers who were on the front lines battling against ISIL.
Yes, the coalition did hit people on Saturday. We did. A terrible accident.
Secondly, the United States promised to separate the terrorists of al-Nusra from the so-called moderate rebels that they were supporting. Yet months and months later, the U.S.-backed fighters are still fighting side by side the terrorists and extremists.
And it was our challenge, coming to the table, agreeing in Geneva. Our challenge was to try as best we can to reach out to the moderate opposition and make clear to them that they needed to in order for this thing to work.
It's like all the talk of peace has been forgotten. But if you listen to the words of U.S. officials, it's as if somehow Russia is the one who's being aggressive.
The lunatic war hawks have taken over in Langley, in the Pentagon, and also in the White House. The spokesperson there talking about costs and Russian cities being hit, Russian soldiers coming home in body bags. That to me sounds like an indirect order to terrorists to strike wherever they want to. The thing is, the Battle of Aleppo is the crux of this whole war. When Aleppo is liberated, that is it. Americans know that the game is up. It doesn't matter however much arms and munitions and resupplying they can do to their proxy armies. They're running out of space to fight, and this is why the sort of ratcheting it up of the war of words, I suppose.
In 2015, ISIL was getting more and more powerful, and Russia urged the people of the world to unite against them. After Moscow's bombing campaign, their previously vast territory has diminished. This has awakened previously dormant arguments.
Well, let's remember, one of the things that that people in Washington have repeatedly attacked Russia for is they say, oh, you're not attacking Daesh, you're not attacking Islamic State, you're hitting the legitimate opposition. From Russia's point of view, and certainly from the Syrian government's point of view, they're all al-Qaeda, they're all terrorists, they all have the same ideology. Why should Daesh be singled out?
So now, instead of pizza, war is very much on the menu. Caleb Maupin, RT, New York.
Well, last hour I discussed the Syrian conflict with Franco Frattini, Italy's former foreign minister.
First of all, it shouldn't be the end of cooperation, because this would be against the interest of the United States, against the interest of we Europeans, against the interest of stability in the whole region. My first comment is that rhetoric becomes louder and louder as election approaches, and now they are in a moment of presidential campaign. I would consider really possible now to restore a normal dialogue on how to find a political solution while dismantle terrorist cells. It's a matter of fact. When John Kerry said we are ready to promise to separate al-Nusra from the moderate rebel, is within the reach. It is possible to do, because al-Nusra is trying to infiltrate some moderate rebels, but it's clear they occupy some well-determined areas of eastern Aleppo. So it would be easy to target while preserving civilians.
Well, an attempt to stop the fighting in embattled Aleppo has failed at the UN Security Council. Rival draft resolutions from Russian and French on the Syrian crisis have been vetoed. Moscow argued that the main proposal of the French draft, a no-fly zone, could have resulted in an upsurge of violence instead of halting it. The French resolution didn't mention the separation of so-called moderate rebel groups from the terrorists. That was the main condition in the Russian-US talks on the Syrian peace process. But Moscow has been slammed by Western countries for vetoing the resolution.
Your veto today, Mr. President, has only confirmed what we've known for so long. Russia's actions in recent weeks have exposed just how hollow Russia's commitment to the political process is. Today we have seen that commitment for what it really is, a sham.
The feature of this draft resolution is a ban on all military flights over Aleppo, not only its eastern part but also the west, which is repeatedly shelled by the fighters from the east. And the concept of this ban has not been worked through at all. Why does it include the western part of the city, which is controlled by the government? The answer they give, it's more convenient. Is this a serious conversation?
What Russia wants is for there to be more talk, while they seek to take the city by brutal force.
It's a sham, just as Russia's hollow commitment to a political process in Syria is a sham. The indiscriminate bombing of civilians in Aleppo is sickening and barbaric. Please, stop now.
The US and UK ambassadors were, as always, competing in their provocative rhetoric. The UK envoy was emotionally exclaiming, "Stop now." Indeed, stop supporting extremists and terrorists worldwide now. Stop interfering in the affairs of other independent states. Stop these colonial habits.